Hi, in today's video I'm going to show you how to install Emacs-29 as a pure GTK application running natively on Wayland, not XWayland, on any Linux distribution or Mac OS X. And the way we're going to be doing that is using nixpkg, Home Manager and the emacs-overlay. What I'm going to do is run XLS client, which will list applications that are currently open that are running under XWayland. So XLS clients, and what you'll see here is we have the terminal here, urxvt, is running as an XWayland application, but Emacs isn't listed. So what I'm going to do next is run xeyes, and what this will do is when I move my cursor over a XWayland application, or an application that's running under XWayland, you can see the eyes are moving as I move them over the terminal, which is urxvt running under XWayland. If I move the mouse over Emacs, you'll see that it's not moving. So what that's doing is it's actually showing that Emacs is running as a native Wayland application. So what I'm going to do is actually take you through how you set this up. And if I run Emacs version down here, you'll see that we're running Emacs 29.5. So the way we're going to be doing this is using what's called nixpkgs. And nixpkgs is a package manager. There's NixOS, which is an operating system, and nixpkgs is a package manager that you can install on any Linux distribution, or Mac OS X, and what it will do is allow you to install the latest applications without interfering with your system configuration. And the way it does this is it has this concept of a store where each application and all its dependencies are stored inside a single directory with a unique name, so there are no conflicts. So what I'm going to do now is actually take you through setting up nixpkgs and Home Manager and installing Emacs-29 as a pure GTK application using what's called the emacs-overlay. So let's come across. So first of all, what we need to do is to actually set up NixOS, we need to create a directory at /nix. And what this is going to do is this is going to hold all the Nix applications we install. So what we do is we run sudo mkdir-p /nix. So that's at the root of your file system. It's going to create a Nix directory. What we need to do next is actually chown the directory. So we do that by running sudo chown and then $brackets whoami /nix, and what that's going to do is that's going to change the ownership of the Nix directory to our account. And the reason why we do that is because that allows us to do stuff without having to run things as root. Okay, that's the first two steps. You create the directory and then you chown it. Then what you need to do is actually install the nixpkg package manager, and what we do is we're installing this as a single user install. So the way we do that is running shush and then this curl command that's piped in, that's curl-l and then nixos.org nix install with this --no-daemon option. And these instructions I'm giving you here are all for Linux. They're slightly different for Macs. There's a variant of nixpkgs for Mac called something like Darwin. Mac, I can't remember the top of my head. So the instructions are slightly different for Mac OS X. So I'll show you the nixpkg site and the instructions for Mac as well. So on Linux, what we're doing is we're running this command here, and this installs nixpkg's package manager. So that's the third step. Then what we need to do is run in the terminal. After we've run that, we'll get a little prompt saying run this command, and it will look like this except it will have your username here. So all you need to do is copy the command that the terminal spits out into the terminal and paste it in. Now the next thing that we're going to do is edit our ZSH-env file and add a section where it says export xdg data directories equals home.nix profile share xdg data directories. And what that does is when you install applications, desktop applications with nixpkgs, it's going to create .desktop files that will typically show up in your application launcher. On your system, these are usually installed at user share applications, I think it is, and in your home directory in .local share applications. And what this basically does is it adds this, it sort of exports, it adds the Nix profile share sort of applications directory to the list of locations where desktop files are searched for, basically. So that's the next step. So once we've done that, what we're going to be doing is actually moving on to installing what's called Home Manager. Now, Home Manager is another part of nixpkgs, and what this will allow you to do is create a text configuration file and use that to actually install applications. The advantage of this is that you can actually copy this text file to another system and run Home Manager, and it will install exactly the same applications on that system. Home Manager can also be used to manage your dot files, so you can actually put your dot files and configuration for your system into Home Manager, and it will write out all the dot files into the correct locations as well. So first of all, what we need to do is run this command, nix-channel-add github.com nix-community home-manager archive master.tar.gz space home-manager. And what this does is this adds what's called a channel to nixpkgs, and this is like a list of places to search for application for things to install, basically. Simplified way of putting it. And then what we do is we run nix-channel-update, and that updates the list of channels. Now there's another note down here. On a non-Nix OS system, and that basically means a system like ours where we're just running the package manager and not Nix OS, you may have to add this section to your shell configuration, like your ZSH-env. So nix path equals home.nix def expressions channels nix var nix profiles per dash user root channels nix path. So you may have to add that to your shell config. So setting up Home Manager, we added the channel, we updated the channel, and then we added this to our shell path. Okay, come back down to here, next section. Sorry, let me move down a bit, come on. Okay, so the next section is we actually need to install Home Manager. So we've added the channel, and that's basically like sort of a repository, and now what we need to do is actually install the application from that repository, and we do that by running nix-shell single quotes angled brackets home-manager capital A install. And once you've done that, Home Manager should be active and available in your user environment. So the next step is actually the config for Home Manager, and in this section I'll show you how we actually add the emacs-overlay, so we can install the latest version of Emacs with GTK support. Now Home Manager can manage your shell configuration and your dot files, and I use Emacs org documents and tangle them to tangle my dot files. So I don't want Home Manager to manage my dot files or my shell. So what I do is, if you do not plan on having Home Manager manage your shell configuration, then you must source this bit of code in your shell configuration. So in my zsh.env, what you'll notice is I've got 3 bits. This bit will be added automatically by nixpkgs when you install it to your shell configuration. It will say nix path equals home. Oh no, it's this bit down here. Sorry, my bad. This bit down here will actually be added automatically by nixpkgs when you install it to your shell configuration, so that it can basically source some Nix configuration files in your shell. But what you may need to do is do this thing here. First of all, you need to export your Nix path, as I just showed you, and then I put in this section here, Nix don't manage shell. And what we do is we basically say if this file exists, then source it. So that's one thing to note. The things you've got to put in your ZSH env file. So after we've done that, what I'm going to do now is take you through, if you've already got nixpkgs installed and you've installed applications, how you uninstall those and then use Home Manager instead. So this is only if you've already got nixpkgs installed and you've actually installed some applications. So what you need to do is run nix-env-query installed, and that will spit out a list of applications that are installed. And in the nixpkgs manuals, there's a section showing you how to create a configuration file that will allow you to install applications using something called package overrides. And that's what I was using before, and all the packages I had installed were installed with something called my-packages. So what I did was, to uninstall those, what you do is, if you've got nixpkgs already installed, what you need to do is run nix-env query installed, and you basically need to delete all the other packages apart from Home Manager path. So what you would do is you would run nix-env-e and then like my-packages, or you know, the nix here and the nix ca cert. So this section's only if you already got nixpkgs installed and you've just installed Home Manager that I've shown you. Once you've done that, what you would do is you'd run garbage collection, and so that's how I removed the packages nix-env-e my packages, which were all the packages that were installed in my configuration file before I switched to Home Manager. And this is garbage collection. This is how you remove unused packages. So again, this little section's only if you've got nixpkgs installed and you want to clean out everything before you install set up Home Manager. So what you'd run is nix-env-delete generations old. That deletes all the old generations. Then you would run nix-store-gc, and that's a garbage collection function. And then finally, there's another little garbage collection function here called nix-collect-garbage-d. When you run all these, this will remove all the unused applications and symlinks. So I know it seems like there's a little bit to get through here, but it doesn't actually take that long. So what I'm going to do next is show you the configuration file. So this is the configuration file called Home.nix. When you install nixpkgs and Home Manager, what it's going to do is going to create a file called Home.nix that will be stored in your home folder .config nixpkgs home.nix, and this is the configuration file. And this is really cool because what it allows you to do is create a list of files that you want to install, a list of applications that you want to install from the nixpkgs repository, which is, I think, almost as large as the Arch Linux AUR. It may even be larger. So I think there's like 50-60,000 applications in there or something. And in this home.nix file, what I'm going to do is take you through the setup for building Emacs with pure GTK so that it runs natively on Wayland. And the way we do that is using something called an overlay. And what we're going to be doing is using the emacs-overlay, which allows us to basically build Emacs with pure GTK support. So what we've got here is this little section here, config pkgs. Then we have let, and we say unstable import fetch tarbell. Okay, and it's got this link here, nixpkgs unstable. So what we do first of all is the emacs-overlay is part of the we need the NixOS unstable channel as well as the overlay. So first of all, what we're doing is we're fetching this Nix unstable tar.gz, and then what we've got this section here is it says overlays. What we're doing here is saying import built-in fetch tarball URL equals, and then what we've got here is this link to this Emacs overlay master.tar.gz file. So we're fetching the tarball for the Nix unstable, and then we're fetching this thing called an overlay from this URL. And then what we have down here, and we say in, and what we've got is here programs.emacs enabled equals true, and the enabled equals true is needed so that Emacs can run as a daemon, so that you can use the Emacs client and open up Emacs more quickly, basically. So we've got programs.emacs enabled equals true, package equals unstable, Emacs pure GTK native comp. Now there are several different versions of the overlay that you can actually use. So I think there's just a pure GTK one, and then there's native comp, and I think what the native comp one, it uses GCC. So that's that little section here. Now what we've got down here, this is next really cool thing, home.packages equals with packages, and then a list of packages that we want to install. And these are all packages that can be found on the nixpkgs website, which I'll open in a second to show you how you can search for stuff. So basically this is a text file with a list of applications you want to install, and we've set it to install a custom version of Emacs as well. So these are all the applications that I'm using nixpkgs to install on my system. We've got ABook, APG, ARIA2C, BAT, EXIF tool, EXE. We've got lots of GPS stuff here, gparted, handbrake, ImageMagick. You can see Emacs isn't listed in this section, it was listed above. We've got stuff like command line applications like MPC, MPD, Newsboat, NSKIV, which is an image viewer, which supports WebP files. SKIV is a suckless application that as an image viewer, but NSKIV is the latest version that supports WebP animations. You got lots of stuff down here, lots of all your favorite command line utilities. So I use it to install TIG, tmux, YTDLP, things like that. And the advantages of this is that you'll actually get a later version than you would in your standard repositories. So this bit down here actually creates the is actually created by Home Manager. This little section down here, so to find your home username, your home directory, and a state version. Program Manager enabled equals true, so let Home Manager manage and install itself. So that's what the config looks like, the Home.nix. We've got the config up here, let statement, import the NixOS tarball, add the overlay. We've got Emacs here, set it to use this unstable. So this is the reason why we need to install the NixOS unstable tarball, because it's pulling it from that location. So the package is unstable.emacs-pgtk pgtk native comp, and I said I think that's the pure GTK version with GCC. And then we've got the section down here, home packages, which is where we can install our packages. So the next thing that we actually do is we're going to use something called cachex. I think I got that pronunciation right. And what this is basically is it's a cache of pre-built binaries. So using this will actually speed up the compilation of Emacs. So there will actually, the overlay, what it will do is, this is only available for some versions of Emacs. It may not be available for Linux, but I think it's available for Mac. But what this cachex does is it is a cache of binaries, so that when you're using nixpkgs, it will actually use these pre-built binaries if they're available for your system, rather than actually having to compile stuff. So what we do is we crack open the terminal and we just run nix-env-ia cachex-f, and this location here, cachex.org API v1 install. After that, what we do is we use the binary cache. We run cachex use nix community, and then finally, after all that, what we can do is run home manager -switch. And what that's going to do is that's going to take that home.nix file and basically install all the applications we've got listed in it. And it's also going to build Emacs. So what it's going to do is it's going to get Emacs and it's going to get the overlay, and it's actually going to compile it. And it took about 10 or so minutes on my Dell XPS 15, which was 16 gig, and a bit longer on a MacBook Air 2011 with 4 gig of RAM. So it doesn't take long. But basically what it will do is it will download and all, install all the applications, and then it will actually build Emacs with pure GTK support. And as again, that takes a little while, but there is one thing to note, is if I come across to my .config nixpkgs file, so this is the file, what happens is, I think whenever there may be an issue where if you change something in this file and run home manager switch again, it may recompile Emacs again. So it said that only takes 10 or 15 minutes, so it doesn't take long. But that's just one thing I should mention. So let me just quit this. So what I'm going to do is come into my Emacs config up here. Okay. So what I've got installed here is I've got the Doom themes installed, and this is the Doom Solarized Dark theme. So the other thing to mention is that typically you can set up Emacs with, it will typically pick up settings from your XResources file. So you can set your font, you can set things like the the scroll bar or the toolbar not to appear in your X resources file, but that only applies if you're running Emacs through XWayland or on Xorg. On the GTK version, the settings in your Xorg file won't be picked up and used. So what you got to do is actually, okay, where did I put this? I think I put this down somewhere. Let me just figure out where I put this. Oh yeah. So what I was on about is there are some settings that you'll have to migrate from your X resources into your emacs.init el file. So for example, hide toolbar. So toolbar dash mode -1, that hides the toolbar with all the icons that typically show up under the file menu. And then we also hide the scroll bar with scroll bar -1 as well. So there are some things you've got to move across. One other thing I noticed was some of my key bindings didn't work. So let me see if I can find them. I had some key bindings somewhere set. Can't remember where they were set. That no longer seem to work as Magit, not org mode. And I think that's just because I changed the, that's not anything Wayland related, it's just because I changed some keys using XKB on Wayland. That I showed you in a previous video. You can change your keyboard layout on Wayland using XKB. And because of that, I think I sort of might have broken some key bindings in Emacs. Okay, so let's bring that out of full screen mode. So another thing I just wanted to show you here is on when you're running Emacs as an XWayland application, what I found when you're running GNOME Wayland is that when you would put the Emacs full screen, you know, typically that would be using F11, but I've got that bound to Super S. On Xorg, what would happen is when you came out of full screen, what would happen is the window would remain as a full screen window. It just the size would be full screen. It wouldn't return back to this original size. So that's another advantage, is that toggling in and out of full screen with a pure GTK Wayland version, the window resizes properly. Sometimes I have noticed what happens is sometimes it would start up really small for some reason, even though in my init.el I had it to set Emacs set to run full screen by default, which you can run with add to list, initial frame A list, full screen maximized, and default frame A list, full screen maximized. The other thing I should mention is setting your font as well. Typically you can also do that in your X resources file, but because we're using the pure GTK version, as I said, the X resources file isn't used. So to set your font, you do something like add to list, default frame A list, font, and then your font with the size. You can probably be more specific in, you know, setting you know, the menu bar and stuff, different sizes as well. But that was just a quick fix for me, just to get the that setting moved across from X resources. So what I'll do now is I'll come across and open the nixpkg site. Oh, I'll move that sort of I meant to move that across here. Okay. Right. Okay, nixpkg. So I'll take you to the nixpkg site. So what we do is basically we come across to this unstable tab because we're not because we're unstable in any way, but because that will give us the latest version. You've got basically channels which are like a pinned release, or unstable, which is basically the bleeding edge, which is what we want. And in this section here, you can basically search for anything. So as you can see, if I search for Emacs, give it a second, what you'll see here is we've got Emacs listed, but the version is 28.2. There's an Emacs GTK version, and originally I tried that. I just thought, okay, maybe if I install that version, it'll work. But no, it doesn't. You need Emacs 29, which isn't going to be released for quite a while, I think, for a year or two maybe. So what we're doing is basically taking the latest version of Emacs 29, with this emacs-overlay, so that we can get the latest version. So I said this was just basically to show you that the version listed on nixpkgs is 28.2, but the version we're running is 29. And what you'll see here, up here, search more than 80,000 packages. So you can see there's basically a lot of stuff in here. So, you know, command line programs like ytdlp, things like handbrake, all that kind of stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'll come back to Nix. This is NixOS. So, and again, there's two things. There's NixOS, which is the operating system, and there's nixpkgs, which is the package manager that can be installed on any version of Linux. And basically, the way that it works is it creates this Nix store at the root of your system, and everything's installed in there, and each application and all its dependencies are installed inside a directory with a unique file name, and everything that is installed won't conflict with anything else that is installed on nixpkgs or actually on your system. And the way that it integrates with your system is it basically creates a set of symbolic links that point to the applications installed in your Nix store. And this basically allows your system to use these applications, which are running the bleeding edge latest versions, even on something like Ubuntu 22.04 that I'm running here. So this again is NixOS, and it's basically to allow you to create reproducible builds of a set of applications and stuff you want to install. So we've got the operating system, and then we've got the package manager. So where's the, am I looking for the guides for nixpkg? So okay, nixpkg, this is the package manager. Okay, so this is what I was talking about. The version that we used was this one here for Linux. You can see single user install. The other thing I should mention is that nixpkgs will work on the Windows subsystem for Linux, and you should be able to install the Wayland version of Emacs on the Windows subsystem for Linux as well. So this is the Linux instructions, and you can see here there's different instructions for Mac OS X. So it's a slightly different command here, and you can use Home Manager on the Mac as well. So if I come across and search for Home Manager, Home Manager. So this is Home Manager. When it loads eventually, there we go, GitHub. Come on, today. Right. So this is part of the Nix community. And I said, ignore the scary words of warning. You know, as long as you don't shoot yourself in the foot. But basically, what this allows you to do is create this Home.nix file that you use to specify the applications you want to install. And the reason I had to switch to using Home Manager because I couldn't find the instructions for using the Emacs overlay in the way I was using Nix before. So I had to switch to Home Manager, and it wasn't too painful to actually move all my configuration across and get started with Home Manager. Got it installed, ran everything, and took like say 10-15 minutes to build Emacs, pull down all the packages, that kind of thing. And now got Emacs running pure GTK on Wayland instead of XWayland. And again, Home Manager can be used. I come across to the manual. So this is the Home Manager manual. So what we've got is we've got nixpkgs, which is the package manager, and then we've got Home Manager, which allows us to create this configuration file and specify the application we want to install, but it can also manage all your dot files and all your configs as well. So you can actually use it to create a list of dot files with whatever you want in them, and it will write them out for you. So this is the Home Manager manual. I mean, I haven't really gone through. I mean, I just had a sort of quick go through it to actually get everything set up, because you know, there were various things I had to get into. How do I, you know, switch all my existing stuff across to Home Manager? How do you use the overlay? So I had to do a little bit of searching to find the correct way to do this. But once you've got it set up, you've got nixpkg set up. Again, there's different instructions here for the Mac versus Linux, but we use this one down here. And let me just come across to my notes. So what I'll do is just come across back down to here. And just show you the document that I've been going through. So this is Home Manager here. I've also got some notes on how you do garbage collection, which I mentioned before. And garbage collection is basically what you can have. The other advantage of nixpkgs is that you can roll back to previous versions. It's got like a rollback functionality, so you can roll back. If something breaks, you can just roll back to a previous version. And the way that it works, as I said, it's that because everything's bundled inside individual uniquely named directories, it can take a bit of space. So what you need to do is actually periodically run garbage collection, and it will remove previous versions, because you can have different versions of all the applications you've installed, and you can roll back to them, but you can delete previous versions to save disk space. But it doesn't. It can take up a couple of gig if you have several versions. But this is basically the notes that I was going through in Emacs. So we just went through this section here. We created a directory, we chowned it, we installed nixpkgs, we ran that command, we added this to the shell. Then Home Manager, we added the channel, we ran channel update, we added this to our zsh-env file. Then we installed Home Manager, and we set code similar to this in our zsh-env file. This section down here was just for uninstalling applications. If you've already got nixpkgs installed and you're switching to Home Manager. This was the garbage collection I was talking about, and this is the configuration file, the Home.nix, which is in .config nixpkgs home.nix, and you can see it's not that complicated. We've just got this section here that this section here is actually installing Emacs with the overlay. And then what we've got down here is the list of the packages. The other thing I should mention, if I just come back to the packages, so let me show you the name of the packages here. So under each listing for a package on this website. You can search by the command line as well for packages, but it's just quick on the website. When you do this, it'll show more package details. What you'll see here is how you install this in various ways. So the one you actually want, you don't want this. What you'll see is actually, if I look on nixenv, you'll see it's called nixos.handbrake, or non-nixos it's called nixpkgs.handbrake. But because we've actually configured this little bit here, home packages equals with packages, we don't have to prepend each of these names with like .pkg.abook. We can just put in the actual name. So that's one thing I just wanted to mention about this. So what was on? Yeah. So that was the home manager. That was the configuration file. So once we create the configuration file like that, put in our list of packages, the emacs-overlay, and again, when you run the home manager switch, it may rebuild Emacs, so that's just something to bear in mind, but it only took about 10-15 minutes on my setup. And the final thing that we did was we used cachex. So cachex is a community project with cached binaries, and what we did was we ran this command to add cachex from this location, and then we set cachex to use Nix community. And finally, when we've made changes to our Home.nix configuration file, added new applications, removed them, what we do is we run home manager switch, and I think what this does is it pulls down the latest versions and installs everything. Now there's another thing you can do with nixpkgs called flakes, which allow you to, I believe, pin applications to certain releases and stuff. So you can actually create these flake and flake lock files, so you can specify exactly which versions of an application you want to install, so that when you run home manager switch, it doesn't update beyond them. But I haven't actually got into that. This is a relatively simple setup, although it might look quite complicated. It doesn't actually take that long to go through. And once you've done that, as I said, you'll have a lovely pure GTK version of Emacs here. So let's see if I can zoom the text up a bit. So you can see the text all nice and crisp. So yeah, it works really well. I say that I haven't had any issues with it. The other thing I should mention again was the theme I was using was so package install, mx package install, Doom. You see, it's not listed here because I've already got it installed, but it's the Doom theme, Doom themes, and then this is Doom Solarized Dark. And one thing I did do, coming to my emacs.init.el, you can see as I move my cursor up and down, I've got it's highlighting the line. And the way you do that is with this section here, global H1 line mode 1, and then set face background H1 line face, and then the actual hex of the color code you wanted to use. So this is just like what I did was I took one of the existing solarized hex values and just tweaked it a bit so that I've got a line that's visible against the background. The other thing I should just quickly show you that's nice about this theme is, if I come back to this one here, you can see how source code blocks are highlighted in a slightly different background, which is quite nice. So that's a sort of overview of that theme, the Doom themes, Doom Solarized Dark. Yeah, so let me just go through Well, I've got it up here. These are basically what this is. This is my dot files. This is how I manage all my dot files using Emacs. And what it allows me to do is tangle or write out the dot files to the correct locations. And what I do is I actually tangle them to two directories at once. I tangle them into all the correct locations in my home directory, but also into my Git directory. So if I just open this here, so you can see here in my Ubuntu doc files, it actually creates the files, all the files and the file structure, and that's done with what's called tangling. So for instance, here I've got the home manager, I've got the home manager config. So this is the my home manager config stored inside an org document, and then what I do is I can tangle it to two locations. So I can tangle it to .config ~.config, but also just .config, which will be the current directory. And there's a keyboard shortcut that you can use. If I come up here, tangle document. So to tangle the entire document, I just run Control-C, Control-V-T, and that writes out all the source code blocks in this document to my home directory and the current directory. And this is really useful because what you can do is just put this under Git, pull your org file down, and then you just basically tangle it on your other machine, and it will write out all your latest changes. So no more moving things about, symlinks or any of that kind of stuff. So this is why I use, I'm not using the option in Home Manager to manage my dot files, is because I do it in an org document. So a couple of things that I wanted just to recap on was that was the Home Manager config, which then it had the other thing I had to change was the ZSH EMV. So if I come into my ZSH EMV configuration file and come down to the bottom, what you'll see is I've got this section down here with these couple of blocks of code. So the NixOS XDG directories, we've got this section here. And again, this is because what nixpkgs does is it creates this. If I open .nix profile, so this is when you install nixpkgs, what it's going to do is it's going to create a couple of Nix directories in your home directory. And as you'll see here, what we've got is like share applications, and this is basically the same as your .local share applications or user share applications. It's a list of desktop files that are used to actually open applications from a graphical user environment. So like this is the dot file for Emacs. So what this section does down here is it adds that list of desktop files created by Nix to the system, so that things like your application launcher can pick them up. So if I run this here, you can see that things like Handbrake should be showing up. You can see Handbrake, Meld, stuff like that, and those were installed with nixpkgs, and they show up in GNOME as desktop entries that you can launch with your launcher. So that's what that section's for. The next section here is the Nix path that we need to add. This section down here is just so it doesn't manage the shell. As I said, you can set it to sort of manage your shell configuration and dot files, and I didn't want to do that. And finally, this little section down here will be automatically added to your shell config by nixpkgs when you install it. So that's just the ZSH EMV file I wanted to go through. The other thing was the X resources. So coming to X resources, I've actually commented out these sections down here. So previously I was running Emacs on Xorg. So that it was actually using the X resources file for some of the settings. So for instance, you can set Emacs toolbar 0 or Emacs vertical scroll bars off or Emacs font. And because these don't have take effect on the GTK version, I've commented them out here because we had to basically put those equivalents, the equivalent into our Emacs config. So yeah, just come down here. Yeah, so that was toolbar mode -1, scroll bar mode -1, and adding the font there. So those are just a couple of things I just wanted to recap on that you need to change. So you got your home manager, you got your Emacs config where you got to put a couple of new things. And again, your X resources file isn't going to be sourced basically by the GTK version. So I'll just quit that. There were a couple of I haven't had any issues with it at all. So I've got this set up to. This is running the Emacs client. So if I'm run key binding. So there's Emacs. I've started a new Emacs client, so you can see that started maximized. So that window starts maximized. It's taking those settings on from the emacs.init.el file. And if I resize it, yeah, you can see that's one really weird thing. So the weird thing about setting it to maximize and then unmaximizing it is it sometimes goes like this. I'm not sure why, but I close that. And again, if I toggle this full screen, it returns to its original size. So that's how you can install the pure GTK version of Emacs 29 and get it to run natively on Wayland and not XWayland on any Linux distribution or Mac OS X. Obviously, you haven't got Wayland on Mac OS X, so you know, but you can run the latest version, the GTK version on Mac OS X as well, and it doesn't take that long to get set up. And again, this is going to be, it's not going to interfere with your system. Everything on Nix is stored completely separate from your system, and yeah, it's great because you get the latest version of Emacs, even on a long-term release like Ubuntu 22.04 using nixpkgs. It doesn't take that long to get set up. So again, I'll put links to all this, but this is basically what I've gone through. So just come across it, and again, just skip the. You just need to skip the section down here. This is just specific if you've already got nixpkgs installed. So really, you can just come across, paste these all in the terminal. Copy paste, copy paste, copy paste. This one's going to be you have to change your username. Edit your shell configuration files in some places. Run a couple of commands, and then finally, once you've gone through this, created your Home.nix file like this. Added obviously remove any applications from this list that you don't want. This is just my config, but finally, you add the cachex so that you can use cache pre-built binaries, and then to apply the changes in your Home.nix, you just run home manager switch. It's going to basically download all those applications, and it's going to build Emacs as a pure GTK application. So I should actually show you the Emacs Nix OS Emacs overlay. Okay, so this is the Emacs overlay that we're using to accomplish this and install the latest version of Emacs. So this is like the quick start. This example is actually for the Nix OS operating system as opposed to the nixpkg package manager and home manager, so I had to do a little bit of digging to find the correct way to do this. Well, basically in this section down here, it will actually, if we scroll down here, furthermore, we provide Emacs compiled with native compilation backend under the attribute Emacs native, Emacs git native comp. We also provide two attributes named Emacs git-nox or Emacs unstable nox. If you want to have, if you wish to have Emacs built without X dependencies, Emacs pgtk and Emacs pgtk native comp use the experimental PGK features which support Wayland natively. And I believe these were originally had slightly different names, so if you're searching around, you may find stuff with slightly different names to these. And I think this is Emacs, the GTK version with GCC, and that's what I'm using basically. So this is the Emacs-overlay that we're actually using. And this was Home Manager. So there were a couple of things we're using to get this done, but again, you only have to paste a couple of commands in the terminal, edit some configuration files. Again, this is the Home Manager site that we're using to create the Home.nix config file. And again, this can also be used to manage all your dot files. So if you're not using org to manage your dot files, well, why not? Although you can use Nix to do this, I just prefer using Emacs. But the option's there if you want it to manage all your dot files, manage your shell configuration files. And basically what this will allow you to do is actually install all your applications and your dot files in one go. So if you've got multiple machines, this can be really useful in replicating the environment and all the applications across multiple systems. So that's Home Manager. This was the NixOS package site that we went to, so that we can basically search for packages to install. And again, there's more than 80,000 packages that you can actually install using this, and it will allow you to install the latest versions of loads of command line and GUI applications that you wouldn't have access to if you're on a long-term release or something. You know, maybe if you're on Arch Linux or something, you can find some of these things in the AUR. But as I said, I'm using Ubuntu 22.04, so that's a long-term release and has older packages. So if I come across to, for example, if I come across, open up the terminal and start apt search Emacs, and I'll show you what the version of Emacs is. Let me scroll it all the way up. Come on. Okay. That's one thing I hate about apps. Okay, let's come right all the way up to Emacs. There we go. The Emacs package on Ubuntu 22.04 is Emacs 27.1. Come across to Emacs here. Emacs version Emacs 29. So we're running Emacs 29 on Ubuntu 22.04. Full Wayland support. GTK, GCC, what other buzzwords can I throw in? But yeah, it's great. So you can set this up on any Linux distribution at all, or on Mac OS X. But the main benefit is on Linux, because as you can see here, I'm running Wayland. And again, just one final time, we can check what applications are running under XWayland by running XLS clients. And that's going to list the applications that are actually running under XWayland. And you can see here URXVT. This terminal is running under XWayland. And if I run xeyes and move my cursor over the terminal, you see the eyes are moving. But if I run it over Emacs, they stop. And the reason for that is because it's not an X window, so xeyes can't pick up any information from that window. So XWayland, Wayland, XWayland, Wayland. You get the idea. So that's 2 easy ways to check if an application's running under Wayland. XLS client or XEyes. I think XEyes is actually installed with X11 extra applications or something it's called. But you can do a quick search, but I think it should be installed by default on most applications, distributions. So that's in a nutshell, Emacs with Wayland support on any version of Linux, basically. And you just got to run through a couple of things to install. You should get this done in the whole process, probably installing nixpkgs and getting it to pull down everything, probably less than an hour. It did take me about maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes to actually compile Emacs 29. Took longer on my old MacBook Air from 2011 with 4 gig of RAM. On this XPS 15 with 16 gig of RAM took about 10-15 minutes. Then basically I just opened Emacs and it was running as an XWayland application. I'll put links to all this under the video. Again, this is the document, and you can just remove anything from this section you don't want to. I mean, you can just, I'll put links to my dot file. So if I just come up, I just come across to my doc files. So nixpkgs raw. So I put a link to this so you can basically just download it, remove any applications you don't want, search for new ones to add. Once you've done that, all you need to do is actually run at the end, once you've made all your configuration changes to your Home.nix file, all you've got to do is run home manager switch. But what I would recommend is perhaps adding the if you're going to do a lot of changes to the applications you're going to install, you might want to add this block of code to install Emacs after you've done that, because otherwise it may sort of try and recompile Emacs every time you run home manager switch. So pick your applications to install from the packages, and then remove this section, run home manager switch, and it will install those packages but not Emacs. Once you've got everything set up and those applications, add that block of code in, run home manager switch again, and then it will download and build Emacs. So that's just a note. So I haven't tested it yet, but there may be a case where if you sort of change the packages you've got installed, it may recompile Emacs. So just bear that in mind. So I'll put links to all this under the video, and hopefully that will get you set up with if it comes up on OBS, there we go. Nice version of Emacs. I should put something like Emacs rocks, and then click down one. There we go, Emacs rocks. Yeah. So that's Emacs running natively on Wayland, pure GTK. About less than an hour should take you. And again, using nixpkgs and Home Manager, I think you'll really like it. It'll allow you to install lots of applications, the latest versions, without interfering with anything in your system. So I'll put links to everything under the video, and that's all for now.